to start immediately saying right there, because the climate was such, and that Tyson Fury is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Did you forget about a guy named Ali and Joe Louis and Jack Johnson and Rocky Marciano? And forget about the size. We're not talking about size because all of that obviously adjusts with the era. All of that changes with the era. You know, from years ago, the football players, baseball players, and fighters were smaller. Human beings, athletes, they were smaller. They didn't have some of the training elements and technology and supplements that they have today. And on the whole, they were smaller. So we're just talking about the greatness of the fighters. And part of George Foreman, I mean, I could go on and on. Joe Frazier, I mean, just go on and on.
A prime Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson, I forgot about him. How could I forget him? Mike Tyson, Sonny Liston, Larry Holmes. Like I said, I started with Ali and Joe Louis. That's not a bad start. And you talk about that. Part of what goes in to the judgment of that greatness is longevity. Who they fought. Now, look, I know you can only fight who's around in your era. And he's around in a pretty forgiving, is that too strong? Or forgiving era? I shouldn't say forgiving. But Tyson Fury was around in an era that was pretty good to be around.
Not very deep.
Yeah, I mean, conducive to being a top heavyweight if you're a heavyweight. He was around in that era. He was, and he is, and he's benefiting from that. But he's also benefiting by how good he is, and he's terrific. He's the most versatile heavyweight that's been around for a hell of a long time. Technically sound, dimensional. He can do so many things. Brilliantly smart. And a brilliant promoter. I will put his name with Ali here without it being blasphemy. Where I say he promotes, he makes you think of Ali as a promoter. His greatness is that great. It outshines everyone else by that much. So, yeah, he's a genius. And I give him all the credit. He's the best heavyweight there is right now, as I said, in all the ways that I just said it. But to say, you want to say he's the greatest British heavyweight? Okay, go ahead. I'm not gonna go nuts on that. But to say he's the greatest heavyweight in the history of a sport that's been around longer than any other sport in the world, with the names that I just finished throwing at you, I mean, and not only were they around when, again, you can't control the talent of your era, but these guys were around where they fought talent of different eras. That's how long they were around, where they actually tapped their toe into the pool of talents from other eras, other decades. And Fury hasn't done that. He hasn't been asked to. He hasn't, who knows how long he'll be around, because he said he retired, and now all of a sudden it's great. That's another great thing about a guy like him, where he's unpredictable. You gotta give it to him. He announces the day before the fight he's going to retire, and then in the ring he announces his next fight. That's pretty magical. That's pretty special, and I know we're going to get to that. And also, I want to say, look, I was wrong. I said that Dillian Whyte, and I know there's people out there waiting for me to say this, so I'm going to make sure I do. I was wrong. I said Dillian Whyte was going to be competitive in this fight, and he was far from it. He was a lot of things, but he wasn't competitive. I did say, though, that Tyson Fury would win the fight. Matter of fact, my exact words was, I can't go against Tyson Fury. He's the best heavyweight there is right now. And, I just, after all that he's done, coming off the floor and everything else, I can't go against this guy. And even in his life, coming back from suicidal thoughts, problems with alcohol and substance abuse, being that depressed, and coming back from that, and not only surviving it, but excelling, thriving, becoming the best in the world in what he does, and world famous and world rich, and an example, a real example for people to follow, to remember that no matter how low you get in life, no matter what happens, how depressed you get, how down on yourself you get, you can come back. That it's not as bad as you think it is at that moment. You can come back. You can come back and make things right. Make life fair. Make life right for yourself again. The only way you can't come back is if you give up. But if you don't give up, there's a lot out there that still can be in store for you, that you still can achieve, you still can discover.
Hypothetically, if Fury were to get the winner of Usyk and Joshua and to win, do you rank him in the top 5 heavyweights of all time? People have been flooding us with questions about where do you rank Fury in terms of the greatest heavyweights of all time?
I don't think you can put him in the top 5, but make him the greatest British heavyweight, no problem. Obviously,
better than Lennox Lewis?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Lennox Lewis was terrific, but he obviously wasn't undefeated, and he was, he was a gold medalist from the Olympics. Lennox Lewis, terrific heavyweight, terrific person outside the ring, inside the ring, everything. Originally from Jamaica and raised in the UK, I believe.
And spent time in Canada, Jamaica, Canada, and UK.
And Jamaica, Canada. You're right. Listen, you want to make him the Lennox the top UK heavyweight champ of all time, if you can do that. But then I think that Fury would succeed that. Fury would succeed him and take that place with what he's done. He's undefeated. He's fought everybody except, well, put it this way, let him go beat Usyk. Really, let him beat Usyk, and then I can start thinking about, not the greatest of all time, but I could start thinking maybe I let him into the top 5, maybe, because the greatest of all time, you're talking about guys like Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Jack Johnson. I mean, come on. And then you get to Larry Holmes, and there's just so many of them. Joe Frazier and Mike Tyson. My goodness. Mike Tyson at his prime, obviously. So when you're talking about that, there's longevity involved there. Some of these guys, I know you can only fight the guys of your era. I talked about that earlier, but he was around. Fury was around in a pretty good era to be heavyweight. If you're going to be heavyweight, he was around in a pretty good era. It's kind of like if you're going to be a farmer, you want to be around when the soil is fertile, right? When there's good soil, and the soil is fertile right now to be a top heavyweight. It's fertile, so you can grow your corn. You can grow your produce, and he's done that. But there were other eras where the ground was not as fertile to grow your produce, where the heavyweight division was a little tougher. And some of these guys I mentioned, not only were they around during those eras, but they ventured into other eras. They were around that long. They ventured into other decades of other fighters. So to make him greatest of all time, no. I mean, I just don't see that being practical or even responsible right now. I think that's we're getting over exuberant, we're getting caught up, we're getting intoxicated by the moment. But when you sit back and you look at the guys that you have to look at when you're going to put together that list, I think that you calm down a little bit and the emotion goes away a little bit. You see it for the way it needs to be seen.